the boss.
Oh, yeah. Hey!
Hi.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Welcome to the Berlin Open stage show, The Boss Podcast. I am Trevor.
And I'm Stentor. We're your hosts, but every week we invite new people to sign up and host their own podcast episode right here on the feed.
That's right. It's sort of an open podcast feed, I guess, is maybe the more apt title these days.
More than a show, because it's not live, which it used to be, but will be again, hopefully.
But anyways, you know, we open it up and we let anyone sign up, and it's always someone interesting, sometimes celebrities. Usually they're kind of like talking about something very, very particular to them.
Yeah, something close to them, something that matters.
Yeah, and I think that's something that maybe it's just our values that we like to see in the podcast, but we love personal material.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that
just
people
bare
care
your
about.
heart and I'm going to listen.
Yeah, and in this episode, I'm excited for this episode because the person that signed up is a film critic and I'm a filmmaker. And so this is always fun for me when we have these film episodes. And they're talking about a movie that I kind of like this movie actually as well.
Yeah, this movie is called Permanent Immorality.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this sort of like very cool counterculture detective story from the 60s, 70s kind of thing.
Based on a novel.
Yeah, based on a very cryptic novel. And I don't want to get in too much because I think, you know, our host today, he really understands this movie better than anyone.
Yeah, but he's only digging into like one sentence from it or something?
Yeah, so his thing is that he's examining this movie one sentence at a time, which is like pretty crazy.
Wild. That's wild. Yeah, it's going to take a few episodes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be permanently doing this podcast.
Wow. Without further ado, please welcome Gavin Snoops with his podcast, Permanent Immorality.
Hello, and I am film blogger Gavin Snoops, and welcome to Permanent Immorality, the podcast where I will examine my favorite film, Permanent Immorality, one line of dialogue at a time. I think this film is a highly underappreciated work of art from writer-director Tal Thomas Henderson, and based on the nearly unadaptable novel of the same name by the mysterious author Thomas Squeezon. That has captivated me since the first 35 times I saw it in a movie theater on opening weekend. Every time I watch it, I'm glued to the screen, hoping that this might be the time I crack the surface of this mysterious looking glass that is a deceptively humorous detective story set in the waning days between the promised utopia of the 60s and the nightmare of the 70s in none other than Los Angeles, California. Before I introduce the wonderful guests who are joining me on today's episode to break down the opening line of dialogue from this film, I should make a disclaimer. In addition to my film blog work on Whoops Oops, the Cinema Scoops of Snoops, I'm also a private investigator living and working in Los Angeles. At the moment, I'm no longer fielding any new cases, as I'm in the midst of following the greatest lead that's ever landed in my lap, this movie. Perhaps there's no way to introduce it other than the lyrics to the song that I haven't been able to get out of my head. Round and around we go. Where the world's headed, nobody knows. Great Googa Mooga, can't you hear me talking to you? Just a ball of confusion. That's what the world is today. Let me hear you, let me hear you, let me hear you. Ball of confusion, that's what the world is today. Those are the lyrics to a real song, Ball of Confusion by The Temptations. But they are echoed very similarly in the fictional and possibly parodical song that opens the film. Over and over and over I go. Where the song's headed, I don't know. Big boogie woogies, I'm just yapping tooey, just a sphere without clarity. That's what this song is. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Sphere without clarity. That's what this song is. I think there's something that I need to get to the bottom of in that song and this film. So joining me to try to figure out what the heck this movie is and why we can't get it out of our heads are film critic Ava Snack, or Ava Snack? Ava, thank you, Ava. As well as filmmaker Parsley Garnish.
Wonderful to be here. It's parsley.
Parsley.
It's a soft S.
Parsley.
But it doesn't matter. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Parsley. And Ewan Rawl Could.
Hey.
Ewan Rawl Could? Thank you. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast to talk about, well, it's my favorite movie. I don't know if it's your favorite movie, but perhaps we can start by, when were you guys introduced to Permanent Immorality? Maybe Ava, you can start with.
Well, obviously, Permanent Immorality was much frequented text in our film studies class. It's kind of just become the Citizen Kane of our generation.
Pretty fascinating that a film from only a couple of years ago could have such an impact on a film class.
Yeah, I know. It really, it's almost tested time itself and how that whole thing works. But yeah, it's just something I had been fascinated with since my university days, back 2018, 2019. And, it's kind of just been something that I watch every morning to wake up. It's become my little cup of coffee, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and we should say that it's a 3-hour film, give or take. So that's a pretty long cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no other way to wake up, and I feel a little differently than you. That for me, this is sort of my falling asleep, sort of, I guess, my my melanin, or whatever. What is that people take? Is it melanin that people take to fall asleep?
I inhale lavender.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, parsley. I'm never gonna get this right.
It's a gentle S.
The gentle S. But your name is almost as mysterious as the film, and that's what I'm so excited to be talking to you, a filmmaker here, to help us break down this movie.
Well, what I think the director achieves with this movie is making something so incomprehensible that the audience, it's constantly left maybe less one chess move behind than a whole chess tournament behind.
Yeah. It's almost like this game, actually, this chess metaphor I love, because it's almost like you're watching a chess game, but then you realize at a certain point that there's 7 other chess games that are being played that you can't actually see. And I think that's what this movie is. It's actually a movie that you can't watch because it's not actually there. The movie you're watching isn't actually the movie that's taking place in some ways, I think.
And you almost want to stop it. You want to click that little stop clock they have on the table, but it doesn't stop.
No.
It doesn't give you a chance to figure out what the devil is going on. That's why it's such a fantastic conundrum of a film.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Ewan, what's your relationship to the film?
I guess I watched it last night and I hadn't seen it before.
So you had never seen Permanent Immorality before?
I don't think I've even heard about it before. I'm not really sure why you asked me on this program.
Well, I must have had some kind of intuition that you were a fresh perspective. I mean, I know that Ava and Parsley and I we are in deep on this film, so maybe you can offer us a little bit of a fresh air. You're our periscope to reality, perhaps.
Just looking at your email that you sent to me, you said as a film critic, I should come on the show and talk about this. I'm a film critic.
You're a what?
I'm a film critic. A lot of people make this mistake, but I'm a film critic. It happens a lot.
Dr. Phil?
It could be Dr. Phil.
Landfill?
I think the last time that I was meant to discuss Mary, Mary, Mother of Mine, another classic, and I had those emergency period cramps, they called you, didn't they?
They called me?
To fill in?
Oh yeah, I get that a lot too. I get asked on a lot of podcasts, and I do get asked to replace people a lot because I'm a film critic. It's a common mistake, and I do go on those podcasts and I do go on those appointments because I enjoy the forum, and I have nothing against movies. I guess I watched a few of them, so yeah, I'm fine with being on podcasts as long as I have a forum to speak about my film criticism. So yeah, I watched the movie last night.
Yeah. So could you give us an example of some of your Phil criticisms then? Because I'm a bit confused if it's Phil, Phil, or Fill.
Well, it's Phil, but
So okay, it is the name.
yeah, but
Phil.
people
Okay.
get confused a lot. I don't blame them. I mean, there's not a lot of people that do what I do.
Okay.
I believe you have us here, Gavin, under false pretenses. I thought this was a podcast for film fans.
It is.
I'm
it
certainly
is
no
a
Phil
podcast
fan.
for
I
film
can
fans.
tell you that. I'm a Phil critic. I'm not a fan of Phil.
Well, I would love to, just talk your ear off about Phil from work after the recording, of course.
If he's anything like the other ones, then it's a piece of
Perhaps
shit.
this is all a fairly good opportunity to get going with discussing the film, in which it features our protagonist character, who just so happens to be named Phil. Is his first name, actually. And he goes by a nickname Quack, and is Phil Quack Athletico. And he is a private detective, as we all know. And should we get into the first line of dialogue and just start figuring this film out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we all know, because we've just seen the film, it sort of opens in a diner, right? And we hear that song, the lyrics I was just quoting, pulling back from a little jukebox. And then we find Phil, our main character, sitting at a diner table. So did someone make a noise?
Just made a general noise of disgust. I mean, I almost...
yeah, but we can get to the line of dialogue in a second. What did you have a feeling about the film already?
Watching when I heard his name, it disgusted me.
Right, because so you already had a reaction right away, and that's really
I don't know if
interesting.
that's what the director wanted out of this, but it spoke to me in a very, very horrible way.
And did you know his name was Phil at this point?
Only when he was introduced as such. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
which was
later.
I guess it was the end of this scene, which we would get to if we were doing episode 7 of this podcast, because there's 7 lines of dialogue in the scene. We're just going to focus on number 1.
I mean, I was very excited that even just when you see the diner, because of course, I mean, my area of focus, obviously I've developed the Snackdel Test, and so diner scenes immediately, I just prick up.
Yes, I'm so happy we get the opportunity. And you were the perfect person to bring on for this episode because, right away, we have a Snackdel Test scene right here. I mean, we are in a diner. And so to get to that line of dialogue, Phil, a waitress comes over, and Phil looks at the waitress and he says, 1 omelet, 1 cup of coffee, an omelet, and a cup of coffee. And that's the first line of dialogue in this film.
I know, I watch it every single morning, and each time it's just like, boom,
Yeah. And Ava, you ever cooking up an omelet and having a cup of coffee when you...
I don't mix my eggs and my beans. Everyone knows that.
God, yeah, that's good, yeah. But wow, so now we're off to the races. We got this crazy line of dialogue. I mean, I don't want to get started right away on all the different ways I can interpret this line of dialogue, but obviously this is a mystery story, and right away the filmmaker dispels with any mystery as to what Phil is going to order at that restaurant, right?
I mean, immediately we know so much about who this guy is,
I agree, yeah.
It's a very informing line. He likes the basics, and he's a bean and egg mixer. What more can we say?
Yeah, right away we know everything about him. Parsley, what did you think of this?
I just think, straight away we know where we are. We know which era we're in. You see the jukebox, you're in the 1950s, but then the twist, when the text comes up and it reveals it's actually towards the end of the 60s.
Yes, yes.
So immediately you're having twists.
Just as one would twist a coffee grinder, for example.
Wow, or whisk an egg.
Or whisk an egg.
Yeah. And we really start to see this looking glass of this film where every line, we can examine really closely, blowing it up like it's a microscope and really looking at who is Phil and what is Phil's story. And, Ewan, maybe you can give us a little insight.
Sure,
We'll just write on
I think
what were your baseline
I think
feelings.
a diner scene like that is a very good way to start a movie. Is you see, it's something we all know. We've all been at a diner. We've all had eggs and beans or coffee or whatever it is. And it was in a diner much like this that my mom first introduced me to her boyfriend Phil. You know, I didn't think much of it at the time, but I barely looked up from my moon over Miami. But, you know, I didn't know at that moment that he would stick around. So I guess, you know, that scene in some way evokes a feeling of like sorrow for me in general.
That must be a painful
Absolutely.
memory. Yeah. And I think it's exactly that kind of pain that the film is asking everyone to react to, because everyone, I think, has a stepdad Phil, right? Like, in a way.
God, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
You have two, Ava?
Yeah.
You have two stepdad Phils?
Yeah, I've stepdad hot Phil and stepdad super hot Phil.
And those were in subsequent order, or are they the partners of your separated parents?
Yeah, concurrent.
Concurrent, yeah. So who your mother or your father are dating hot Phil or super hot Phil? Which one?
My mother's dating hot Phil. And hot Phil, I have to say, he's great in the kitchen. My father's dating super hot Phil, and he doesn't need to be good in the kitchen.
Okay, I would take these hot Phils with a grain of salt, to be honest, because, you know, Phils may appear to be, you know, hot at first or just, you know, a cozy, nice person, but, you know, they will soon reveal themselves to be, you know, just the type of guy who, you know, at Christmas, you know, hands you a box and you think, oh, it's the Xbox I wanted, and you open the box and it's a PlayStation, and you're like, what the fuck? Come on, oh.
No, you make me.
What the fuck, indeed. Are we going to talk about the movie, or?
Yes, of course, Parsley.
It's just that I was going to do some script writing.
You were going to do that. So we're taking you away from your script writing? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, no, I'm really happy to do this. It's just that it's something I was going to write a scene. I try and write a scene a day. It's something that PTA does as well. So,
have you any?
Sure.
If you don't mind me asking, were you planning on including any snacks in your scene that you're writing today? Do you have a good snack track ratio?
You'll have to see. Wait, stay tuned. I mean, you know, some of my characters must be eating food. It's not really the most pressing thing in a movie. It's more to do with character, emotion. Well, it's only not pressing
because you're not used to. I would just encourage you to keep it in mind and to think critically about what you're writing. That's all.
So, I mean, maybe let's stay on the thread then, Parsley. The scene, what's happening in this scene, right? So we know from the first line of dialogue he's ordering food, and then from the second line of dialogue that the waitress responds with, which I'm going to go into next episode. So I don't want to talk about it too much. You know, I don't want to ruin the surprise for what I'll get into with that episode. Great guests lined up to talk about that line, which the line, of course, is, yes, I'll be right back. And, you know, that is a line right there. And we could talk forever about the line. In fact, I will talk forever about that line with some other people. But yeah, I mean, what did you guys feel about that?
We're just focusing on the first line today.
Yeah,
focusing on the
this
first
episode,
line,
yeah, look, poke holes in my premise here, my podcast, because, like, that's what this film is all about. It's about poking holes. It's about cracking an egg and whisking it up, and that's all I'm really trying to do. Is crack an egg, whisk it up, make an omelet, have it with coffee for breakfast, mix the eggs and beans, as Ava was saying.
Can you remind me just one more time the first line, just because I was more closely looking at the motifs?
Yes. So the first line of coffee, as I mentioned, we pull back from the jukebox, that song's playing, and Phil is sitting there at the diner table, waitress comes over, and he says, 1 omelet and 1 coffee.
Yes, 1 and 1.
Yeah.
A
Yes.
very important number throughout the film.
Yeah.
Snake Eyes, conventionally an unlucky number, and I guess as the movie unfolds, it will definitely be an unlucky moment in time for our hero.
I cannot. I'm so happy that you bring this up, Parsley. This metaphor of those snake eyes gambling. Perhaps Phil is gambling in a way, and I mean he is a detective, right? So every case he takes on is a bit of a roll of the dice. He's throwing the snake eyes. I think that's a wonderful. Of course, the numbers, are relatively meaningless because there's a lot of numbers in this film. Numbers kind of make their way into, I think, every scene at some point, which perhaps
not as meaningless as you might think. I mean, even just the fact that we have, not just one food item mentioned, but 2 different food items mentioned in the same scene, that alone bears just like taking note of.
Could you maybe...
you don't often see that kind of representation. It's usually every scene is centered on one snack maximum, if even. So to have the first words of the movie to just be, denoting the omelet, and we don't even know how many ingredients are in that omelet. He didn't ask for eggs. He specifically asked for an omelet, which is meaningful in itself. But to add the coffee to the order, I think, straight away.
Right. So right away, this is a Snackdel pass, right? Like this passes the Snackdel test.
Well, okay. There's a few sort of levels to passing this. We've got a foot in the door of the Snackdel test, I would say, because we do have 2 snacks being mentioned. However, it really, to pass the test, the scene needs to not be about the snacks.
But it's not. It's not about the snacks. It's about, right, we've established that it's this kind of guy, and he's got 1 and 1, snake eyes. He's rolling the dice. Even what he's eating, he's rolling the dice. He wants an omelet and a coffee, mixing eggs and beans, as you said. What is going on in the mind of a character who mixes eggs and beans?
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, one of the, patterns that we see throughout the whole work is this notion of what comes first, chicken or egg. And right at the start, egg first.
And not only egg, also omelet.
Eggs and beans are sort of a cowboy's diet, I would say, in a way.
Yes.
It's the most basic staple food that you could have, in a way.
Absolutely.
Just to throw my kind of... I mean, this is the first movie I watched in I guess, a couple of months, But I think I'm reading a lot into it, too. I think I get what you guys are going for. I mean, 1 and 1 is also... It's not a very good basketball stat line, either. Like if you're a player, let's say, when I was playing in high school, this one game, I had 1 point and 1 rebound. I took a free throw. I got a couple of free throws. I was fouled. I hit 1 shot, and then I missed the other one, but I was able to rebound it and was immediately fouled again and missed both of those free throws. So after the game, I was, unhappy about my performance, and Phil was there, and he sat me down on his knee, and he said, son, it's not all about the stat line. It's about how you help the team. And, this opposing player got a couple of fouls in there that helped the team in the long run. You showed a lot of good hustle out there, and you were playing your heart out there on the field, and that's what mattered. And I said, oh, Phil, it's called a court. It's called a basketball court, not a field. God. I mean, this guy doesn't even know basic sports terms. I think that's like one of the... I mean, it's not top 5, but it's one of the major problems with Phil, I would say, in general.
Wow.
What the fuck... sorry, Gavin, for my language, what the fuck does this have to do with the film?
If we have a little patience with Ewan, I think it has a lot to do with the film.
Just delete that.
Okay, just hear me out for a second. I'm willing to make a stretch. I mean, as we can all agree, Parsley and Ava, people who are obsessed with this movie, who can't get it out of our heads. For someone like Ewan, it's new and fresh. Maybe there's connections that we should follow and let ourselves follow these tangents, kind of like the film does. I mean, how could we forget the roller coaster sequence? I mean, that's a tangent, but we can get to that later. I mean, I do get to that later. 23 episodes from now.
We see those eggs and beans make an appearance, absolutely. A reappearance.
Yes,
I should
we do.
Say.
But what I want to say is perhaps with Ewan's story, maybe that we can make an assumption that it's not about these stats, right? This movie's not about the plot. It's about the heart. I think there's something that Phil says to you, which maybe doesn't make you feel very good, but if you release yourself from these numbers and these stats, and you start to look at, well, what does it mean to even play basketball? It's a ball. is it not similar to an egg? What if we cracked open that basketball? What would be the mysterious stuff inside of that might enlighten us or make us, who are we playing for? Even larger questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're giving Ethan a lot of credit.
It's Ewan,
that
first of all.
response.
Parsley.
I think Gavin's on.
Whatever. I think that unlike the story we just heard, the movie isn't just surface value. There's a lot to crack open, as it were. And it's a real three-pointer, whereas that story was just
okay. Well,
foul.
Maybe Parsley, you can explain to us a little bit. So what is your favorite part of the film? Do you have something you want to Is there something you see, a meaning you see?
Well, I think it's a choose your own adventure story. You watch it. You can watch it a number of times, and you can go on a different
it's a
journey
regular
with it each time.
banter
That's what
snatch.
makes it so
Excuse me?
It's a regular banter snatch. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's Black Mirror. Yes, I suppose that's the version for the
Easy,
Netflix generation.
Parsley, easy.
Well, it's the only thing I have since Phil canceled Hulu for us. I don't know. I mean,
Cancelled Google.
Hulu.
I feel like it feels like you're not even taking me seriously or anything, Parsley. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have come on.
You're definitely on the money there.
Wow.
Well, I really appreciate that you're here, Ewan. I mean, I think it's just fascinating. Everybody in my social circle, we eat, sleep, and breathe Permanent Immorality. So it's great to. I have to ask. While you were watching the movie, did you partake in any nibbles? Were you a little peckish?
Well, yeah, I didn't actually. I was in my room like I do. I was just. I have a big keep out sign on my door, and Phil knocked and he said, I made some snickerdoodles. You want some of these? I'll just and I yelled out like, no, go away, Phil. And he said, I'll put them down here on the floor in case you change your mind. I love you. And, I didn't take them, I did take them. I did have a few of them, but, I didn't like, I did like them, but I didn't feel good about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think, but to answer your question, Gavin, I think my favorite scene in the movie is probably the gunfight.
Oh my God.
As an ode to Peckinpah, Leone at his best.
Yeah,
really
so
is a tour de force.
I mean, who brings the corn cob to a gunfight? Phil does.
Yeah. Oh my God. I know that again. This is where I'm really regretting the rules that I've established for my own podcast here, where we're only examining things one line of dialogue at a time. That scene is just amazing. I mean, that is first of all 135 minutes into the film, so we're a long ways away from getting to that. Podcast-wise, I guess we can talk about it now because people are going to even forget by the time we get to it. But yeah, when Phil brings a corn cob to a gunfight. And he pulls it out of his pocket and he says, say goodbye to Dad for me. That's a wonderful moment.
He gets it stuck in his teeth. I mean, come on.
In a lesser film, that moment wouldn't have worked. I think it might have seemed a bit spoof-like, I guess. But in this, it's so grounded and so real.
Absolutely.
I gotta be honest.
I mean, they're in Illinois.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I didn't love the scene where the character named Phil said, say goodbye to Dad. Didn't really wasn't quite up my alley, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. Yeah, that must have been really weird. I didn't know this.
It's fine. I mean, I gotta deal with my stuff, There were a few triggers throughout this thing, but, that's why I'm a film critic. I come on, I talk things through,
Well, speaking of triggers, the way he pulled it on that corn cob, I mean, the prop department, my props go out to
absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But Ewan, you said there were a couple other triggers for you in this film.
I mean, I didn't love it when In the Air Tonight played.
Right.
I mean, Phil
Right.
Collins. It's just another. I try not to hate other people named Phil, Dr. Phil, whatever.
And they have a lot of Thin Lizzy.
Yeah,
in
that's Linnet is his name.
the
Whatever.
Permanent-
I mean, it just
Phil Lynott.
triggers me, and and I know
It triggers me to do a big round of applause in the cinema.
that triggers you.
Personally. Yeah, was such a the perfect music choice for that moment.
Oh yeah. Well, I also didn't love that supporting role where Philip Seymour Hoffman showed up.
Yeah.
In his final role.
Yeah,
You didn't enjoy that, okay.
I'm not gonna say I'm happy he's dead.
But you won't say, yeah.
You just did.
But
Just did.
so there's a lot of Phils circling
One
this
less
film.
Phil out there to be spoken about.
So a lot of Phils are circling this film. I mean, we also have a great performance from actor Philip Baker Hall.
Yeah, this is insane.
We also have, in his first acting role, as far as I can tell, Philip Glass plays the villain in this film.
Yeah, mostly speaks through piano playing.
Yeah, which, come on, you gotta like that.
I thought Leslie Phillips was fantastic in her first dramatic role.
And they had that whole scene in the movie where they were watching Captain Phillips.
Yes.
And it's such a weird movie within a movie thing.
And not to mention, and this is where we get into, so one of the things I love about this film is that there's this underlying, changing of the tide of time, right, that happens. What is the world like in 1969, and what's it becoming in 1970? And one thing that we get to see in the rise of corporate America, Philips, the brand Philips also plays a huge role in this movie.
Listen, I don't want this whole thing to be I don't think he even says the name Phil in that first line.
No, he doesn't
There's
say
no Phil
that
in
at all.
I'm very happy to be just talking about the first scene, to be honest. We don't need to make this about my whole...
Yeah, it's just that you
Even though I
bring
do enjoy
such
the
an
forum.
interesting perspective that I think we're learning a lot
Yeah.
about the film. None of us had that strong of a reaction to... Hey, correct me, Ava and Parsley, did you even know that there was any Phils in the movie before this conversation? Or is this just sort of a new enlightening moment for you?
I have to say, as much as, I do watch this on the daily, straight through, I always just kind of thought him as the main guy.
I didn't even know his name was Phil, to be honest with you, until we started talking today.
I mean,
I don't believe it's ever actually spoken in the movie.
it must have been at the end of Usual Suspects, and you just see a full wall and everything. It just says Phil all over that wall. It's just a coffee cup with Phil on the bottom of it falling to the ground, shattering.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the Usual Suspects.
I mean, what's so great about the director is that every element of the movie is a chance to create meaning, right? So Phil itself is like a void.
Yes.
He is no one and everyone. It's nothing is chance in this film. And that's
Which kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the Snake Eyes. And it reminds me of coding and binary. We have ones and zeros. So we have Phil, who is a zero. And we have the egg, the omelet, and the coffee, which is a one.
Well, since Philips are the big multinational baddie in this film, he takes on big electronics company. He's hence the one, hence the binary.
Yeah, it's not a classic movie structure of man versus man or man versus nature. It's man versus big electronics company.
Yeah. But we could expand further on that, right? As you mentioned, that there are these very sort of well-known plot archetypes or conflict archetypes, like you said, man versus nature. This one is kind of man versus name, I think, is this plot archetype.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you bring up names, because this is another reason why I was a little hesitant to say that, we're passing the Snackdel test right at the start, because even though those first lines are, I want an omelet, coffee, we're not having these snacks named. They're generic, nameless, could be anything snacks. It's not asking for Maxwell House coffee, not, asking for, local, Sunnydale Farms eggs, omeleted up with, we're not giving any agency to these snacks. They're just kind of snacks to prop up the fact that, the main guy, Phil, I guess, is hungry. He has
I understand what you're
desires.
saying, and maybe it's hard for me to completely understand, so I'm willing to let you.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
I don't want to snack-splain anything, of course, and I do think it must be hard to see such specificity in the names of characters, of people in this film, and to see the snacks become snack number one, snack number two. I think that must be very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have written to the director to, offer my services, as I have to every director that's ever lived. Even you, Parsley, there is a letter with my name on it in your office somewhere, just saying that I would be happy to advise in these situations. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, I'll be in touch.
Do you have a lot of
Great.
snacks in your movies, Parsley?
I mean, if the scene needs
Don't have any gratuitous
you
snacks.
I don't have I need to include 50 snacks in my next film. If the scene, if character needs it.
Parsley, I just want to make sure that we are careful with what we say here. I think every scene needs a snack. Snacks are part of life, and I think it's wrong to exclude the possibility because of our hungry gaze.
Okay, well, if you have a set, a scene set on the moon with two astronauts walking across the moon,
but those astronauts could be snacks. Those astronauts could be snacks, Parsley.
Yeah. Haven't you ever had the dehydrated astronaut ice cream?
Yeah, I mean, once they get back to the space station,
they can have a snack.
There has to be a certain level of realism.
Well, if I was walking on the moon, I would be certainly sure to bring some kind of a protein bar, or like a fruit roll up with.
How are you gonna eat it in your spacesuit?
I would devise the licorice thing from Wayne's World in the car. I would have that in my helmet, so I just have to tug.
And do characters ever get full, or?
Did you say do characters ever get full? Oh, sorry.
Full.
If they're eating a filling snack.
Full Ethan.
Timid.
Pardon?
It must be difficult, Ewan, because to hear me talk about this, because of course sometimes snacks are filling and sometimes snacks are filled, such as a Twinkie.
Yeah.
What constitutes a snack in a scene for you? I know you have this Snackdel Test. You require 2 snacks to be talked about within a scene, within a film. Is this correct? What constitutes a snack? Could say you could have a Twinkie and then just a wine gum. Would a wine gum constitute a whole snack?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they are named.
What if it was just something that was not conventionally eaten, like a pencil cap?
No.
I think it's tricky, though, when we get into talking about what's not conventionally eaten, though. I mean, because we all have different standards for what conventional edibility is anyway. I mean, what you may find conventional to eat, I may find strange and bizarre. And I think that's where this film kind of, if we can get back to the film at hand and the line of dialogue, 1 omelet, 1 cup of coffee. There's no denying these are conventional things. Maybe, Ava, you would disagree that you wouldn't combine the two, and that's abnormal. But now we're already seeing it's a melting pot of perspectives in 1 line of dialogue, I think.
And what's so interesting, like you mentioned, Ava, is that there's only 1 type of omelette. He says 1 omelette, and doesn't specify, is it ham and tomato, is it onion, which implies this is a minimalist diner, or what's going on here?
Yeah.
Right? You're asking questions.
I agree. I think that you make a really good point, Parsley. Is it the special? Are we really supposed to just assume that there's only 1 omelet on offer?
Perhaps he's a regular customer. They know which omelette he likes.
But he doesn't specify the omelette. He says, I'll have a omelette. And I think people often overlook, I'll have 1 omelette.
That kind of sounds like
perhaps
sometimes he might order 2 or even 3. But that begs the question, because of the cause and effect of when he goes on that roller coaster and throws it all up, did he know I'm going on a roller coaster, I'm not going to have my usual 5 omelettes at my diner? So that
Wow, I had never.
I never see. This is why I think your presence on this podcast, Ewan, is really helping and this is what I want to achieve. I want to bring in new perspectives to this film. Obviously, it can't just be, a bunch of people talking who've seen every reel of this, every frame of this dang thing 100,000 times, like myself and Parsley and Ava, and I think that you're right. That is such a fascinating scene, and it just reminds me that
an amusement park was the last place I saw my real dad.
Wow.
He took me to an amusement park to ease the pain of the divorce.
So did you feel you reacted very strongly to that scene then? Would you want to maybe come back for that episode? Or those couple episodes?
And relive this? I don't know. Is Parsley going to be there? I don't know.
Well, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of people who can offer the perspectives, but there's a scene.
It's hard,
we have like 10 episodes for that scene, the roller coaster scene alone.
Ethan, when you went to the amusement park, did it?
Sorry?
When you were taken to the amusement park,
did it amuse me?
Were you amused?
That's not the feeling I remember. The feeling kind of was represented in this film when he's throwing up. He's throwing up on the roller coaster. That's pretty much. I reacted very strongly to that scene because I felt like I was throwing up while I got the news. And also, it was weird that in the amusement park, the London Philharmonic was playing a live concert outdoors, and that reminded me of Phil again. He's really into. It's not only Philharmonic, but he likes to joke that he's into classical music, and he likes to call himself Philharmonic. He'll sometimes make these jokes. My mom gets sad a lot.
Pretty good joke, I just want to say. I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, I don't like it. I mean, my mom gets sad a lot. She's had a rough life. She lost her job, of course, the divorce. And then sometimes Phil will make these jokes like, he'll be like, pleased to meet you, I'm Philharmonic. And he puts on the record and my mom will laugh. It doesn't make me laugh. I mean, I like that she's happy, but, I don't like Phil.
Ewan, do you recall when you were at the amusement park if you indulged in any overpriced funnel cake, candy floss, candy apples?
It's kind of a blur for me, but I mean, weirdly, corn on the cob is triggering to me. I don't know if it's because we already talked about corns having triggers earlier, but I guess that is bringing something up for me. Listen, I don't want to make this all about. I mean, I do appreciate the forum to talk about my film criticism, but I mean, I also don't want to step on. You're obviously very smart people and know a lot about movies.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. And maybe while we're here, just because I feel like we've gotten so much amazing stuff out of this first line. I mean, I feel as though we could almost end this podcast with this one line of dialogue because it really tells the entire story as far as I am concerned. Maybe one by one, we could just kind of go around and give the best summary of this story that this film is trying to tell as best we can. I could start maybe just what you see in the film, and so for me, it's
This is a fun exercise, Gavin.
So for me, what I see is a detective story about a guy who he's scared that he's losing the person that's most important to him in his life, he's being replaced by someone who, or no, not he's being replaced, but someone who is maybe a father figure to him is being replaced by. So, Ewan, did you just react again?
Yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah. So was it something I said? Maybe my interpretation of the film.
I mean, honestly, did my mother put you up to this?
I don't know your mom.
Okay. It just, she keeps trying to talk to me about these things and bringing in specialists and therapists to talk about these issues.
So you think, hold on a second. This all feels like a setup. You think that I started a podcast about my favorite film that came out in 2015 and that I...
Stars Philip Seymour Hoffman, Philip Biggerhall, and Philip Glass as the villain. The characters lead name is Phil. It has a Phil Collins song and the London Philharmonic playing it.
And not to mention,
there's a lot of filling snacks.
Not to mention, none of those songs and performances or recordings are in any way tied to the era in which the film takes place in.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the weirdest things, is because Phil Collins has that whole new wave sound that I don't think fits very well into a late 60s period piece.
Yeah. So you think it's
bold
I agree.
filmmaking.
It's bold filmmaking.
Bold
bold
filmmaking. Phil Collins is bold
Have you seen
idiot.
Have you seen the one where 7 different actors play Bob Dylan?
Have we seen the Todd Haynes film? Is that the one you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just bold.
Yeah.
Okay. Not everything has to be.
And
Exactly
did you want to
to?
say again what you said? In case it got buried in the mix?
Do you want me to repeat my comment about Phil Collins is a bold idiot?
Yeah. Just in case it was missed before, I wasn't sure.
It's fine. I have a whole blog about him.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
They shouldn't have called that band Genesis. It should have called it Exodus, because I want them out of my life.
Wow. Well, I think we're nearing the exodus of this episode, unfortunately, and it's kind of hard to say goodbye to this first line of dialogue. I feel like we went on such a journey so far. I don't know, maybe we can just go around the horn and give our sort of closing thoughts on how this scene really makes you feel. Maybe, Ava, you can start by giving it.
I think in addition to what you said yourself, Gavin, it just really paints a picture that what we're looking at here is what sustains a person and what sustains Phil. And, also acknowledging the fact that Phil is himself a snack. I would say more so than my own personally known Hot Phil and Super Hot Phil. Phil's kind of taking it to the next level. And, what does a person really want for breakfast or in life?
Wow. I love that. I love that concept of what really sustains someone. That's beautiful. I wonder if that's possible even to track through other films that seem so singular to this film, I think. Yeah. Parsley.
Well, I suppose I have a question. What is breakfast? It is something that gets you off to a good start. Right? Something that, a way to begin the day and to proceed throughout. And this line is very much just that. It's just the perfect snippet of the director's classic dialogue, delivered with all the panache you would expect from the lead actor.
Bravo, indeed.
Bravo.
That's good.
And who is the lead actor again?
Philip Seymour
Phil
Hoffman, I
Hartman.
believe.
Phil Hartman's
Phil Hartman.
reanimated
Phil Hartman,
corpse?
that's right, yes. It was sort of one of these
I don't know,
CGI
I just-
things. It was very first
Sometimes
one.
I think that the technology has gone too far.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Not far enough.
But you and...
I mean, my favorite cameo, of course, would be the one from Uncle Phil.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
fantastic.
talk about another Los Angeles-based story. I mean, we could go on. I could do a whole podcast breaking down every line of dialogue from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that's for sure. Because there's mystery in Fresh Prince. Who is the king?
Yeah.
Who is the queen?
And are they also fresh?
And are they fresh? And if they're not fresh,
Well,
what
he's a
are
fresh
they?
I also enjoy Phil from SpongeBob. His performance was
Just feeling
Oscar-winning
like
for me.
not a coincidence anymore at all.
Also, Phil from EastEnders. I mean, one of the famous brothers.
Like, I had to Google who that guy was. It was kind of a deep cut for me.
Grant.
Phil
Yes.
Grant.
So is it my turn yet?
Yeah, it's your turn now. Yeah.
Yes, I guess the first line didn't really speak too much to me, but as I kept watching, and I feel like there were a lot of things that resonated with me, shook me to my core, and all the philandering that the main character does through the film. The time he goes to meet that philosophy professor, that was a good scene. And, just the way he talks to me, it kind of reminded me of when my stepdad Phil met me for lunch, and he told me that he He was going to pay my tuition. He said, your mother and I, we would like to help you go get real education. We're ready to pay your tuition for university. You can still live with us. If it's better, we'll pay for a dorm if that's better. We just want to support you and support you in any possible way. What a fucking asshole that guy is.
Ewan, that was heavy. I'm on the verge of tears. Yeah, that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life. And
they mortgaged the house, the one I'm in front of right now.
oh, this is your house that you're in front of?
This is my house. I guess if you're listening, you can't see it, but it's a white picket fence and a garden. I don't like to be in the garden because, Phil mows it and it just brings back some nasty thoughts.
Well, I hope anyone who's listening to this podcast, I'm assuming, is a fan of Permanent Immorality as much as anybody is in this episode, except for maybe you, Ewan. But I hope everyone can probably see the way that your personal story relates to this whole experience is incredible and not.
Yeah, I guess I feel a little better now.
You feel a little better.
I just hope the whole episode wasn't too one note.
I don't think so.
That's good. I'm mostly thinking about your listeners.
I think that with a film like this, where again we go back to those lyrics where that open the song, sphere without clarity. There is. What is this song about? What is this movie about? This movie's about. It's a mirror. I think really, whether it's a mirror for someone like me who just sees meaning in things and wants to see a larger world, or perhaps for Ava, who sees food and wants to see more food, or perhaps Parsley, for you, sees a film and wants to see more film. And then for you, Ewan, sees a stepdad and wants to see more of a stepdad.
Whatever.
I think that's as good a note of any to end this podcast on. Thank you all so much for being with us. I'm sure you'll all be back for different episodes as we continue to examine line by line my personal favorite film, Permanent Immorality. Thank you.
Wow, what an episode.
That was really, I am very excited to continue listening to that podcast if they manage to record it outside of our show.
Absolutely. If he keeps going with this, and I guess it's hundreds or thousands of sentences.
Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue in that movie.
Lines of dialogue. Yeah. So I'm very curious about this.
Yeah. I was just blown away by the different perspectives that people could bring to a film where you think there's one meaning, but there's really at least 4 different meanings. Yeah, and some even so personal that they think this whole podcast that this guy did was a setup to make this guy like his stepdad. That's crazy.
That's an insane viewpoint. Yeah. But I do like personal connections to films. You forget sometimes. Same with this podcast. Some people might like it, some people might hate it. Yeah. It doesn't make it any better or worse of a piece of art. I mean, I guess you could probably get 1,000 people to review it, and you'll get an overall weighted average or something.
Yeah, and that's so robotic. That's so so cyber.
If you put it up on Metacritic or something, I don't know how much, or Rotten Tomatoes, how much would the Boss podcast score
on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, is it certified fresh?
That's a question I don't think I want to know the answer to.
Yeah. So we have a couple of people to thank. We want to thank Kieran Humphries and Amanda King for something. Yeah. And we also want to thank Comedy Cafe Berlin, where we usually host our live episodes, and Bear Radio, who host our podcast episodes online. Check out more of our show and their other podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. I'm saying podcasts a lot. And the band Bangladesh, who made the intro song for this podcast.
Yeah. And of course, check out the wonderful film Permanent Immorality. On Blu-ray, I'm sure, somewhere.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's final role.
Yeah. And Philip Glass. Gotta see Philip Glass acting as a bad guy where he only plays piano. Love it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Berlin. It's the Berlin Open Stage Show. Berlin. It's the Berlin Open Stage Show. It's the boss.
It's the boss.
Oh, yeah.